Hi, good afternoon and welcome. I'm Kat. I'm the marketing manager here at Virtue Technologies, and I'm really excited to introduce the first of a series that we're going to be doing called Webinar Wednesdays. So what we'll be doing is just taking some very topical information from the education IT sector and sharing it with you via informal discussions and via some presenters. And this week we're talking about making the most of your laptops. So I have asked our operations director, Will, to present some of his findings, and that's from customers he's actually spoken to and been in meetings with, and also what we've seen in the market, and just some general discussions around the DFE laptop scheme and how to make the most of it for you guys. Okay, let's go. Hi, Will.
Hi. So yeah, again, thanks, Kat, and thanks for everybody for joining. So basically, just going to spend a few minutes now just talking through a paper that we wrote actually, which is available on our website, and I think Kat may have posted it out with the invite, but she'll make it available again at the end of this webinar. And that paper was about the DFE laptop scheme, and as that scheme is now just over a year old, and the government have delivered 1.2 million laptops, I think, under that scheme. What happens next? So as we're probably all aware, those laptops were really focused on pupils that had no digital device in their home, or their only device was maybe a mobile phone or a smartphone of some description, or maybe had just a single device in their home that was shared across all the users in that household, or they had no broadband and their only access to data was through a mobile phone data contract or something. So these pupils that really didn't have the depth of IT equipment at home that they needed for the remote learning technologies that we've all been quite used to over the last year or so. But as we start to move back to being back in school, and teaching is thankfully starting to go back to normal, what's happening with all these devices? And some of them are now approaching a year old, and they do have some kind of license on them that sometimes may stop working at a year. So we just need to think about that. So I think there's just a few scenarios I'd just like to talk through, and then we can have a little bit of Q&A on that topic. So the three options really that I talked about in the document was first of all to keep those laptops and that equipment with the pupils that were allocated them during the lockdown. The second one that I've heard people talk about is recalling that equipment as people come back to school and using them as a school resource. And we can talk about that in a few moments as well. And then the third option is to bring them back to school and do nothing with them and almost let them go dormant. And hopefully that's not an option that we want to talk about, because that would be arguably a waste of the resource that's been handed out over the last year or so. So let's go back to that. Let's go back to that first option, and leaving the device with the pupil that it's been allocated to. And really, the positives for that one are, that the students that's been identified as needing that additional IT equipment still has that IT equipment at home. They have access to that piece of equipment to do self-study, to do homework, to support their ongoing learning, and arguably to support their own exploration of internet technologies and that kind of stuff, because there is products on those devices that monitor things like safeguarding and web filtering, so that they are quite a safe environment for children to explore with. So the first option there is to keep those devices with those children, and I think that's probably the easiest thing to do, and I think that really does support what the government gave them out to in the first place. The second option, and I've heard a few schools talking about this, is starting to recall those devices into the school and use them as more of a wider school pool, and use them for the wider population. Maybe as support bubbles start to go home, and during the next sort of few months as COVID doesn't quite go away. Things can be allocated to students as they need to be. Some schools might consider using them to replace aging laptops. It's an old problem in anywhere in education because funding is tight, but replacing laptops and things that we use in school is sometimes quite difficult, and we do tend to get quite an aging laptop estate in schools. So potentially there's the option to refresh some of those devices with these DFE units. And the third thing really within this, using them as a school resource, is to maybe start to kickstart the hybrid learning where where students are using laptops in class as part of the learning experience more interactively with teachers. Now that's been going on for quite some time, but some people are starting to take some of that Teams capability that we've all come to love and work with over the past year, bring that back into the classroom, whether you use Teams or whether you use Google or whatever you're using that kind of technology in the classroom, and that can work quite well actually. And so some people are using those laptops to do that. But no matter what you're doing with these devices, what considerations do we need to think about to keep those devices active and running? The first thing is, a lot of those devices have licenses on them that are set at 1 year. So whether that be the safeguarding products, whether that be some kind of firewall, or whether that even be Microsoft Office might be on there, they may well be licensed for a year, and at some point they may stop working. So we need to start thinking about that. And a lot of schools are actually bringing those devices into the school to re-image them into the school's image so they can be managed by the school, and then sending them back to either the students or back to the central resource in the school, how they want to use them. So that's the first thing to think about, is that licensing. The second thing is how do you manage those devices moving forward? If a child takes that device home and it needs support, and the child needs support or the computer needs support, how do you do that? How can you manage that device on an ongoing basis? How do you maintain it? How do you monitor any damage? Because as we all know, sadly, keys do get flicked off, screens may get broken, and how do you manage and how do you monitor that situation? And then the third thing that really is a consideration for these things is refresh. They're a year old now. Some of them are a year old now, some are a bit younger. But the average laptop age that the school keeps is 4 to 6 years these days. So what you're going to do in 4 to 6 years time, you're going to replace that. Is that going to add to your budget at that point? Do you need to start thinking about it now? And do you need to refresh it in the future? So really simple, really just a 5-10 minute overview there from me on that document. Obviously, Kat is going to make that available to everybody that's in the webinar if you've not already seen it. But at that point, I wanted to make it a bit more interactive if we can, and hopefully Kat will be able to field some questions from people, and we can answer some questions.
We had some questions pre-event that actually got sent in. Just for anybody who is on the webinar, if you join any of our future webinar Wednesdays, if you want to ask a question in advance, it's really, really easy to do so. Just send the questions to marketing@virtuetechnologies.co.uk, and we'll be able to add your questions into the webinar and hopefully give you an answer. So no pressure, Will. But the first question is, pre-COVID, we adopted blended learning, so the hybrid learning that you were previously speaking of, by having a few flipped learning classes with our year 5 and year 6 pupils. So can we use these laptops for that?
I think that's fantastic that's been done, and absolutely yes, you can. What you may need to do, I think, is going back to those considerations. You may need to image those devices into your school standard build so that they integrate quite seamlessly into the other products that you use in school, into your safeguarding solution, into your web filtering, into all those other things that you use in school. But absolutely yes, you can use them for that.
And another question that was pre-event is, how do I make sure that these devices continue to be safe at home and for school use?
I think that is back to that licensing point. Now, I do know that some of the safeguarding products and the filtering tools on the devices were set with a 1-year license. So if you are able to extend that license through the existing provision, I think all these DFE devices did come from a supplier, you may be able to extend that license. But what I think would the easiest thing to do would be to again deploy your own image and your own solution in there, so that you are filtering through the school. You are using the school safeguarding solution on the device, and you're not reliant on that third party all the time to continually monitor and manage those devices for you.
And of course, we've got a lot of case studies about the imaging that we've been able to help and support our schools put on. That's just a little mention from your friendly marketing team there. Another pre-event question here is, the laptops we got had an Office 365 license with them. Can we move them to Google? Is there a way to make them work more like a Chromebook?
Yes, you can deploy your Google license onto any computer. So yes, you could reuse that device for Google if you wished. And can you make it more like a Chromebook? If it's a PC, it's not easy to make it look and feel like a Chromebook, but what Chrome is just effectively a browser. So if you start the computer up and log into the browser, then absolutely you're in that Google world and you're using Google resources. So yes, you can use it as a Google device.
Just to add to that point, you can also talk to your IT supplier about Neverwhere, which takes some of your older devices and can actually recreate them as a Chromebook. So I know that we're a Neverwhere partner, but your own suppliers might be as well.
And I completely forgot about that, but yes, there is it's quite a good technique for taking quite old equipment. If you are a Google school, for taking quite old equipment and putting the license on it, it does turn it sort of into a Chromebook, but it stops all the Windows functionality working, because it just gives it access to the internet and allows you to use Google.
And I think, unless any of our attendees have any questions that I've not spotted yet, that is all of the questions we've had so far that I've seen, unless any have been sent direct to you, Will.
I've not got any direct to me, no. Somebody was asking me the other day about what kind of licenses do they need to be looking out for those renewals. And I think, if you look at the whole stack of licensing, you've got the base operating system itself, Windows 10 probably. If you image in that, you're going to be using the school's Windows 10 license, which obviously you're going to get from your Microsoft portal. Then you're going to have Office, which again you'll have a license from your Microsoft portal. Whatever safeguarding tools you use, you'll have licenses for that in school. So the schools will have licenses already for most of the things that will be needed on a laptop to keep it operable. The one thing that I would suggest you check with your IT team, or your IT team will check naturally anyway, is the provision of that license, because some licenses are allocated on the number of students, some are allocated on the number of staff. Some are allocated on a purchase by purchase basis, so you buy 20 licenses, and if you go to 21, you need to go and buy another one. But your IT team will be able to advise on that. But so just bear in mind how you license these equipment. Most licenses is probably going to be a school-wide license, so you'll be pretty good on that.
Okay, so we've not had any more questions, so I think that's it from us today. So I'm very, very grateful to all of you for coming and seeing our inaugural webinar Wednesday. Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Cheers, everybody.